Hey everyone! Tonight we're walking with an army that probably shouldn't have survived at all. You're standing at the edge of the Roman world, the wind gnawing at your cheeks like a hungry wolf, the Alps rising ahead, white, merciless, and cold enough to make you regret every life choice that led you here. The Romans called them Alps, meaning the high mountains, which sounds poetic until you realize it's basically Latin for good luck, you're about to freeze to death. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's get started tonight. You can feel your breath already turning to mist as you step onto the rocky trail. The snow isn't falling, it's just hanging there in the air, floating sideways, stinging your eyes. The sound of hundreds of sandals crunching into frost echoes up the mountain. You're part of a Roman legion, and you're not sure whether you're conquering Gaul or just trying to survive another hour without turning into an icicle in armour. The general, one of those ambitious types who believes every hardship is good for morale, marches at the front. You meanwhile are trying to keep your toes attached. You're wrapped in a wool cloak called a sagum, coarse but thick, the same kind issued to soldiers who marched across half the empire. The Romans thought it was brilliant winter gear, and you, on the other hand, are starting to think wool has its limits, especially when snow melts through it, then freezes again. The path climbs higher. You can't see the next turn, only the silhouettes of soldiers disappearing into mist. Somewhere below, a mule brays miserably. The cold has stripped away every sound except the wind. You can't even hear the men complain anymore. Maybe their jaws have frozen shut. And yet this is exactly what the Romans did best. Walk where no sane person would. Historians still debate whether the average legionary was trained for this kind of climate. Some say they adapted through sheer willpower. Others think luck and a lot of alcohol played a role. One thing's certain. Marching into the Alps was a test of body, spirit, and questionable leadership. By midday, the snow deepens, covering the path entirely. The line of soldiers turns into a slow-moving serpent of dull red cloaks and bronze helmets, snaking through white emptiness. You're not sure which is worse, the silence of the snow or the weight of the armour pressing cold against your skin. Every exhale crystallizes instantly. Even the mule's nostrils freeze. You stop briefly to look back. The Roman banners, those scarlet standards you usually see waving triumphantly in the sun, now hang heavy with frost. It's almost funny. The empire that conquered deserts, forests, and entire nations looks like it's being conquered by weather. Somewhere deep inside you can hear the narrator in your head whispering, "And this is why we invented central heating." Still, there's a strange beauty to it. The mountains glow faintly under the pale sun, the snow reflecting so much light it feels like daylight in a dream. You notice icicles forming on your helmet. When you move, they chime softly, like 1,000 frozen wind bells. The guy next to you chuckles, grunts, and says it's the closest thing to music the army's got. You smile, because it's either laugh or cry, and tears would just freeze anyway. You march on. The climb steepens. Your feet are blocks of ice inside your sandals. Every few steps someone slips, curses the gods, and gets yanked back up by a comrade. Nobody says much about it. You just keep walking, because stopping means freezing. The Romans had a word for this kind of grim determination. Disciplina. Not courage, not bravery, just discipline, the ability to keep going when everything in your body says stop. Somewhere ahead, a centurion shouts that a rest stop is coming soon, a patch of relatively flat ground where they'll build camp. You cheer weakly in your head. Maybe there'll be fire, maybe something warm to drink, maybe your fingers will start working again. The sky turns silver. The sun hides behind clouds that look like stone. You begin to feel time slow down. Minutes stretch into hours, hours into eternity. The snow muffles everything, the world feels hushed, reverent, ancient. The same path you're trudging might have once seen Celtic traders, Alpine tribes, or maybe even Hannibal's elephants years before. You wonder if they froze too? Probably. A gust of wind hits you square in the face, hard enough to sting. You pull your cloak tighter and keep your eyes down, focusing on the footprints of the man ahead. That's all that exists now, those prints, the snow, and your own shallow breaths. You think about Rome, about the heat of the baths, the laughter of the taverns, the smell of bread from bakeries. Then you blink and you're back here, in a world made entirely of ice and breath. At last, a horn sounds, the signal to halt. You're standing on a ledge overlooking a valley blanketed in white. The Legion sets down packs, axes and shields. It's time to build camp. Fires will come later, but for now you just sink down onto the snow and realise something incredible. You're still alive. And as night begins to fall, you start to understand what this journey really is. It's not about war or conquest or even reaching the other side. It's about endurance, the same endurance that will shape Rome's destiny for centuries. Somewhere someone mutters, "Could be worse." You ask, "How?" He shrugs. "Could be raining." You both laugh until your teeth chatter. You exhale, watching your breath vanish into the mist. The Alps have begun to swallow you whole, but for now you keep moving because that's what Romans did. They kept going. The next morning hits like a frozen hammer. You wake to the sound of boots scraping against frost and someone cursing softly in Latin about the gods of snow. You open your eyes, and your eyelashes are literally stuck together with ice. Congratulations, you're now a human popsicle with military training. You stretch your arms and the wool cloak cracks where it froze overnight. The ground beneath you is packed snow, cold enough to bite through your blanket of furs and faith. Your armour, gleaming bronze when you left Rome, now looks dull, grey and dusted in frost like an abandoned relic. The Alps don't care about your empire. They're too old for that. A centurion walks past, his breath visible, barking orders through the wind. The Legion stirs to life, men kicking snow off their boots, trying to look like they're not dying inside. You, on the other hand, are trying to get feeling back in your fingers. The sword handle feels like holding a frozen snake. The worst part, the cold doesn't just attack your skin, it seeps into your armour. Every piece of metal becomes a personal torture device. The famous Roman lorica segmentata, those beautiful overlapping iron plates, might look intimidating in battle, but here they're like a refrigerator strapped to your body. You can almost hear history professors somewhere saying this was innovation, while you whisper, yeah, for frostbite. Historians still debate how soldiers managed these brutal conditions. Some argue they swapped to leather armour or wore padded undergarments called subamallis, layers of wool and linen beneath the metal. Others believe they just dealt with it. Because Rome was built on one principle: pretend you're fine until you actually are. You pull at your tunic, a coarse wool scratchy, but it's life-saving. Beneath that there's linen thin and soft, trapping air like a primitive insulation system. Over that your armour. Over that your cloak. And maybe, if the gods are kind, a layer of sanity. Someone nearby jokes, "At least the cold keeps the lice frozen." You laugh, mostly because it's true. Ancient armies were not glamorous. Your bed was whatever patch of earth or snow your feet stopped on. Your pillow was your helmet, and your sleep schedule was dictated by the guy blowing a horn at ungodly hours. Still, you march on, the sun rises, or maybe that's just the sky turning a lighter shade of misery. Your armour squeaks faintly with each movement. The trail is steep again, icy and narrow. You focus on your breathing. Inhale, exhale, try not to fall. As you walk, the sound of metal clinking becomes strangely rhythmic. It's almost hypnotic, like 1,000 tiny hammers keeping time. You start to imagine this is all some bizarre training exercise. A Roman CrossFit session. Today we climb a mountain and cry internally. A soldier beside you, Marcus, he's from Sicily, poor guy, complains that he hasn't felt his toes since yesterday. You tell him to wiggle them. He says he would if he could find them. He laughs. You do too. Humour, it turns out, is as important as wool. By midday, you stop for a quick rest. The Legion forms a line of makeshift windbreaks using shields. Men huddle together, rubbing hands, stomping feet, muttering prayers to Jupiter, Mars, or whoever's listening today. You take a small sip of wine from your flask. Roman soldiers mixed it with water, believing it purified the drink. You're not sure about that, but it does make you feel warmer. Maybe that's divine intervention. The general rides past on horseback, wrapped in more furs than anyone else, of course. His voice cuts through the cold, "Keep moving, the worst is behind us," which is, statistically speaking, the exact phrase every doomed expedition leader says before disaster strikes. You resume marching, the air sharper now. Every breath burns your throat. You notice frost forming on the metal studs of your sandals. Someone ahead slips and goes down hard. The line halts briefly, curses fly, then everyone trudges on. The Romans were efficient even in misery. A small group of engineers lags behind, dragging a sled of tools. They're the miracle workers of the army, the men who build roads, bridges, and siege engines out of whatever's lying around. One of them winks at you and mutters, "Wait till you see what we do with snow." You have your doubts. That night, the camp goes up again. Circular formations of tents, fires flickering weakly in the wind. The smell of smoke and boiled grain fills the air. You sit near the edge, rubbing your hands, staring at the flames. Someone passes you a piece of bread, hard as a rock, nearly frozen. You soften it over the fire, chew slowly, and taste the faintest hint of home. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the fire fight the chill that's settled in your bones. The Alps loom above like sleeping giants. The stars shimmer faintly through a break in the clouds, and for a second you forget how miserable you are. You think of Rome, of the warm baths, the fountains, the chatter in the streets. You imagine walking there barefoot just to remember what heat feels like. Then a gust of wind slaps your face back to reality. The night deepens, the fire cracks softly. Around you the Legion quiets down, some men snoring, others staring into the dark. You hear the faint jingle of armour as someone shifts in sleep. Somewhere an officer murmurs a prayer for safe passage. You adjust your cloak, pull it tight around your shoulders, and lie back against your pack. The cold is relentless, yes, but it's also strangely calming now, as if it's accepted you. The world feels distant, muffled, like a dream. You exhale one last plume of mist, close your eyes, and surrender to the mountain. Tomorrow you'll climb again. Tomorrow the iron will bite again. Nen. But for now, you let the silence of the Alps swallow you whole. Morning sneaks up on you like a thief in the fog. The world is white again, sky-ground breath, even your eyelashes. The campfire has died sometime during the night, leaving only blackened ash frozen into tiny glass beads. When you reach out to stir it, the cold bites your fingertips instantly. The first thought that crosses your mind isn't about Rome or war or glory, it's about bread. You're starving. The Roman army marches on its stomach, they say, but today it feels more like it's limping. The grain sacks have hardened overnight, the contents inside solid as stone. A soldier named Toulouse, he's from Hispania, always cheerful, bangs his ration against his shield just to prove how frozen it is. Everyone laughs weakly. Someone suggests throwing it at barbarians instead of arrows. That gets an actual chuckle. Food becomes the new obsession. The Alps don't offer much, no farms, no fruit, just endless snow and the occasional glimpse of a terrified goat. So breakfast is whatever you can thaw. The Legion's cook, a man whose job description might as well be miracle worker, starts grinding barley into paste. He calls it pulse, a Roman staple. You call it sadness porridge. He ladles it into bowls, and you sip it like medicine. The first spoonful burns your tongue. It's bland, thick, but warm, and that's all that matters. Around you, the soldiers are silent except for the sound of chewing and sighing. The smell of wet wool, smoke, and boiled grain mixes with the cold air. You could almost mistake it for comfort if you close your eyes. Then comes the water problem. There's no stream nearby, everything is ice. So the order goes out, melt snow. You fill your helmet with the stuff and set it near the fire. It takes forever, and when it finally liquefies, it tastes faintly of smoke and dirt. Someone mutters, "A Roman delicacy." You clink helmets together like mugs and drink anyway. Historians still debate whether Roman soldiers carried enough supplies for Alpine crossings. Some argue they planned meticulously using pack animals and portable grain mills. Others think they underestimated the mountains completely, expecting the same logistics as in warmer terrain. Whatever the truth, you can tell by the way men gnaw on frozen rations that planning might have been an optimistic word. By mid-morning, you're back on the trail. The air cuts sharper than before. The sun peeks through briefly, reflecting off the snow so fiercely you have to squint. It's beautiful in a cruel sort of way, like nature reminding you who's boss. As you trudge upward, the legion's pace slows. Every step feels heavier than the last. Your pack digs into your shoulders. The straps are stiff with ice. You hear the creak of wooden sleds, the occasional snap of leather reins. The mules are miserable, their breaths forming little clouds that immediately freeze. A whisper passes down the line. We'll stop soon. You don't believe it until you see the signal flags. Finally, a break. The men fan out to clear a small area for camp. Some start hacking at wood with short axes, thin, twisted alpine branches that burn too fast but smoke enough to keep wolves away. Others dig trenches for the fires, lining them with stones so the heat doesn't vanish instantly. You join a group building a windbreak from shields and snow. It's clumsy work, but teamwork keeps the blood moving. Marcus, the Sicilian, darts humming a tune about the warm beaches back home. You join in even though you've never heard it before. He grins, his breath fogging the air. See? The cold can't freeze a good song. By afternoon, the fires are alive again. You huddle close, thawing your hands. The smell of something cooking drifts through camp, maybe grain mixed with bits of dried meat. Someone found a flask of oil and drizzles a few drops into the pot, earning cheers like he's invented luxury. You dip your bread in it, chew slowly, and imagine it's a feast. You catch sight of the general standing apart from the group, staring at a map. His face is unreadable, but the line of his jaw says everything. He's worried. The Alps weren't supposed to be this cruel. His plan, brilliant on paper, now feels like a test from the gods. Night falls fast up here. The fires burn low and the cold returns like an old debt collector. You pull your cloak tighter and lie near the embers. Your body aches, your stomach growls, but you're oddly content. There's something ancient about this. Men against nature, together, stubborn, small. The stars above shimmer with impossible clarity. You can see the curve of the Milky Way stretching across the sky. For a moment, you think of how this same sky once looked down on Hannibal, on traders, on tribes who called these mountains home. You're part of that story now, another fleeting shadow on an eternal path. A soldier nearby starts snoring loudly, so loud it could scare off a bear. Someone tosses a pebble at him. Another whispers, "At least he's breathing." You smile into your blanket. Humor, again, is survival. As you drift towards sleep, you hear faint cracking in the distance. Maybe ice, maybe something worse. The mountains shift in their slumber. You wonder what secrets they've buried beneath all this snow, what bones and dreams lie frozen forever. The wind howls softly, almost like a voice whispering from centuries past. You pull your cloak up to your chin, close your eyes and think, tomorrow maybe there will be sunlight. Maybe. For now, there's only you, the cold and the steady rhythm of breathing men, an army alive in the heart of the frozen world. When dawn finally crawls over the peaks, it brings light, but not warmth. The sun glows weakly, like a candle flickering behind frosted glass. You groan, stretching limbs that feel like they belong to someone else. The cold doesn't hurt anymore. It's just there, constant, like the background noise of the Alps themselves. The day begins with another cup of melted snow and a breakfast so minimal it should be called a suggestion. Still, something new circulates through camp this morning. The smell of wine. Not the fancy kind you'd find in Roman villas, but the soldier's variety. Thick, sour, and strong enough to make your breath steam purple. The centurion passes around a skin of it, rationed carefully. For warmth, he says, though everyone knows that's code for morale. You take a sip. It burns its way down, blooming heat through your chest. And for a moment you actually sigh out loud. A soldier near you winks. See, Roman medicine. They weren't kidding. The Romans had dozens of winter remedies. Some were clever, others questionable. You remember hearing from the camp medicus that rubbing goose fat on your feet prevents frostbite. Someone else swears by smearing olive oil and ash on exposed skin. And then there's Lucius, that one guy who insists drinking hot wine mixed with garlic cures everything from cold hands to heartbreak. You hope he's wrong about the garlic. As you march again, the conversation shifts from remedies to strange beliefs. One man says his grandmother used to ward off chills by wearing a rabbit's paw around her neck. Another claims mountain spirits punish soldiers who curse at the snow. You laugh, but not too loudly, just in case the spirits are listening. Historians still debate how much Roman soldiers trusted these folk remedies compared to real medicine. There's evidence of sophisticated military doctors, medici ordinarii who carried scalpels, herbs, even splints. But here, high in the Alps, you take any advice that doesn't involve losing a toe. By midday, you're trudging up another incline. The sun's higher now, reflecting off the snow so brightly it feels like walking inside a mirror. You squint through your hand, the glare burning your eyes. Snow blindness, someone mutters. The medicus nods grimly. He tells you to smear soot around your eyes, like war paint. You do, and for once the ridiculous trick actually works. You look terrifying, but you can see. The higher you climb, the stranger the world becomes. The air feels thinner. You're breathing shallow. The rocks are slick with ice. When you touch them, they hum faintly with the vibration of wind. You start to understand why ancient travellers thought these peaks were alive. They groan, shift, whisper, like old gods muttering in their sleep. A shout breaks your reverie. Up ahead, someone's mule has slipped on the path, legs flailing wildly. The driver yanks at the reins, trying to keep it from tumbling over the edge. Everyone freezes, breath caught. Finally, with a desperate lurch, the animal regains footing. The line exhales collectively. The soldier pats its neck. See, he says shakily, the gods want us alive, for now. You keep walking, each step careful. Beneath your sandals, the snow squeaks softly, a fragile rhythm in the silence. The smell of pine drifts faintly from somewhere below, mixed with smoke from torches. Then, mercifully, the signal comes to stop for lunch, if you can call it that. A handful of grain, some dried figs, and another swallow of that medicinal wine. You huddle near a small fire with Marcus and Tullus again. Marcus is rubbing his hands with animal fat, swearing it works better than wool gloves. You'll smell like a roast boar, you tell him. He shrugs. At least I'll be a warm roast boar. Someone nearby is coughing, deep, ragged, the kind of cough that turns into fever. The medicus comes over, checks the man's pulse and frowns. Lungs, he mutters. Cold air burns them. He mixes crushed herbs into warm wine and tells the man to drink. You silently hope it helps, but you've seen too many men vanish quietly after nights like these. You move on. The snow thickens again, turning the world into a blur. Every sound is muffled, every movement slower. You can't tell where the sky ends and the mountain begins. It's disorienting, like walking through a dream you can't wake from. You think of home again, Rome, with its bustling streets and fountains that never freeze. You imagine the warmth of the public baths, steam curling off the water. You can almost feel it on your skin. Someone jokes, "Next time I'm joining the Navy." You reply, "You'd just freeze at sea instead." Everyone laughs, but it fades quickly into shivering silence. When evening finally creeps in, the Legion halts at a narrow plateau. The tents go up again, their hides stiff from the cold. Fires flicker weakly, struggling against the wind. You sit with your comrades, watching snowflakes fall into the flames, hissing into nothing. You think about all the things keeping you alive right now: wool, leather, fat, fire, stubbornness, and maybe just a hint of stupidity. The Romans didn't conquer the world because they were the strongest. They conquered it because they refused to stop walking. The night grows colder still. You pull your cloak tighter, your face raw from windburn, your fingers numb. Someone passes around the last of the wine, and everyone drinks in silence. You look up at the stars, tiny sparks above the black peaks, and wonder how many soldiers before you stared at this same sky, feeling this same mix of exhaustion and awe. You close your eyes, listening to the faint crackle of the fire and the whisper of snow settling on canvas. The world narrows down to heartbeat, breath, warmth. Somehow, against every odd, you drift to sleep. Tomorrow there will be more cold, more climbing, more waiting for the sun. But for now, for this brief sliver of night, you're still here, still Roman, still alive. You wake to the sound of cracking ice and someone yelling your name. For a second, you're not sure if it's a dream or the mountain speaking again. Then the cold slams back into you like a wall. You're lying half buried under snow that drifted in during the night. You sit up, brushing white powder off your cloak, realizing the fire went out hours ago. The sky above is an empty grey void, too quiet, too pale, too vast. This morning's march is through a pass the soldiers have started calling the Pass of Death. They say it's cursed, that even the goats avoid it. You're not superstitious, not really, but when you see the way the mountain slopes disappear into mist and hear the dull roar of wind bouncing between the cliffs, you can't help tightening your grip on your spear. The line of soldiers moves slowly, almost reverently, like a funeral procession. The air smells faintly of iron and smoke. Every exhale hangs for a second before vanishing. The trail narrows to a thin strip of rock barely wide enough for one man. To your left, a drop so steep you can't see the bottom. To your right, walls of ice that look carved by giants. You think about all the great stories told back in Rome. Heroes crossing impossible lands, gods guiding their way, songs of triumph. None of those songs ever mention what your feet feel like when the blood stops flowing, or how every gust of wind feels like being cut by glass. The man ahead of you stumbles. You reach out, grab his shoulder, steady him. He nods without speaking. No one talks now. Words feel heavy here, like they might anger the mountain. Historians still debate which exact path the Romans used to cross the Alps. Some think it was the Col de la Traversette. Others argue for Montgenèvre or the Great St. Bernard Pass. What everyone agrees on is that the terrain was brutal, sheer cliffs, hidden ice, and temperatures that would make even the gods shiver. You see what they mean when a gust of wind nearly knocks you sideways. Your sandal slips, scraping against frozen rock. For a moment, your balance teeters between earth and oblivion. Marcus, walking behind you, grabs your cloak and yanks you back. "Careful," he mutters. "You fall. I'm not going down there to get you." You grin weakly. "Then I'd haunt you." He smirks. "Already, dear." A low rumble shakes the air. Everyone freezes. The rumble deepens, like thunder, but closer, angrier. "Avalanche!" someone yells. You don't think, you run. Snow bursts from above like a tidal wave. The mountain groans, then roars. You throw yourself against the wall, pressing flat, breath burning in your chest. The world turns white. It lasts maybe 30 seconds, but it feels eternal. When the noise fades, you open your eyes to chaos. Snow piled high, shovels digging, muffled cries. A few men are missing. You join the scramble, clawing through powder, hands numb. Someone uncovers a helmet. Another uncovers a leg. One by one, the buried are pulled out. Some cough, some don't. No one says much. The centurion orders the line to move again. The mountain doesn't wait for morning. You shoulder your pack, heart pounding, and keep climbing. The path zigzags now, steeper, narrower. Your calves burn, your throat feels like it's been lined with frost. The sky opens up briefly, revealing a view that takes your breath away, not from beauty, but from scale. Valleys stretch endlessly below, rivers frozen like silver threads. You can see where you started 2 days ago, a faint dark smudge far below. It looks impossibly distant. Imagine explaining this to people back home, Marcus mutters. You chuckle. They wouldn't believe us, he nods. Good, let them keep thinking Rome's invincible. By late afternoon you reach a small plateau, barely large enough to fit the column. The general orders a halt. The soldiers drop their packs, too exhausted to cheer. You sit on a rock, hands shaking, trying to remember what warmth felt like. A medicus passes by, handing out small lumps of salted pork. You chew slowly, savouring the salt, the fat, the way it almost feels like fuel. Across the camp, someone's lighting a fire, but the wood won't catch. The wind snuffs it out over and over. Finally, they shield it with their cloaks, coaxing tiny embers into flame. When it finally holds, a quiet cheer ripples through the ranks. You can't help smiling. Fire is victory. As night falls, you huddle with the others near one of the few surviving fires. The mountains around you glow faintly in the moonlight, their peaks sharp and cruel. The world feels too big, too indifferent. And yet there's a strange peace in it too. You've made it this far, farther than you thought possible. Someone starts humming a marching tune. Another joins in, off-key but earnest. The melody floats through the camp soft and low like a heartbeat. You close your eyes, resting your head on your knees, letting the sound carry you somewhere far from the cold. You think of Rome again, the warmth, the noise, the colour, and it feels like another life. Up here, surrounded by ice and silence, you realise how fragile everything is. Empires, legions, men, all just brief fires against the dark. The wind sighs through the valley, carrying snowflakes that dance in the firelight. You reach out, catch one on your glove and watch it melt instantly. Maybe the mountain's not our enemy, you whisper. Maybe it's just watching. You don't expect an answer, but for a heartbeat the air feels almost gentle, like the Alps themselves have decided to let you rest. You wake up still sitting beside the fire, your back stiff, your cloak stiff, your everything stiff. The fire has burned low into glowing coals, and your breath leaves little white ghosts in the morning air. The centurion's horn hasn't sounded yet, but men are already stirring. Quiet, sluggish movements, the kind that say everyone's running on fumes and stubbornness. Today, you're told, will be about holding position, which is a polite way of saying, try not to freeze to death before breakfast. The wind howls through the narrow pass, dragging loose snow like ghostly curtains. Every tent creaks, every rope hums. You pull yourself upright and stumble toward the cluster of tents, their hides stretched tight over bent poles, stiff with frost. You duck inside one. It smells like smoke, sweat, and wet leather. 2 soldiers are curled up on the ground, still half asleep, sharing a single blanket. You join them, pulling your cloak around your knees, trying to trap your body heat. The Romans, always practical, designed their tents papilio from leather or animal hide. Usually 8 men shared one. In summer, that sounded like camaraderie. In winter, it's survival. You breathe in the scent of the hides, feeling a faint warmth radiate from the others. Don't steal the blanket, one mutters without opening his eyes. You grin. Too late. You've been sleeping in these hide tents for weeks now. But this morning you realise how fragile they really are, thin walls of flesh and rope holding back an entire world of snow. Outside you can hear soldiers hacking at ice to make drainage trenches. If the tents flood, you'll wake up swimming in slush. You consider helping, but your toes refuse to move. Eventually the horn sounds. Time to move again. You crawl out, blinking against the light. The sun is blinding, reflected from every surface. The snow crunches beneath your feet, sounding almost musical. A small group of engineers is trying to build a windscreen from wooden stakes and animal hides. They're swearing in 3 different dialects. One of them, Gaius, waves you over. "Give us a hand!" You sigh and start helping, holding the hide taut while he ties it down. The rope bites into your fingers, but you keep going. He grins. "You know," he says, "the cold keeps the hands young." You snort. If they don't fall off first. Historians still debate how effective these Roman winter tents really were. Some think they've worked surprisingly well, especially when soldiers packed snow around the base to block the wind. Others believe they were little more than glorified blankets with poles. Standing here, shivering inside one, you're inclined to agree with the skeptics. By midday, the wind picks up. The tents strain against their ropes, their sides slapping like drumskins. Snow begins to fall again, not heavy, but fine, relentless. You and Marcus take turns feeding the fire inside a shallow pit you dug. The smoke curls up through a hole in the tent roof, staining everything grey. To pass the time, you tell stories. Marcus talks about his mother in Sicily, who once swore she could predict rain by how her knees ached. You tell him about your brother, who stayed behind in Rome to open a bakery. "Bet he's warm," Marcus mutters. "Bet he's asleep." You both laugh quietly. Lunch is simple again: grain mash, dried meat and snow melt. The texture's awful, but at least it's hot. Someone sprinkles in herbs from a pouch, and suddenly the whole tent smells like sage and thyme. "Luxury," you say, grinning. He shrugs. "If you squint hard enough." Outside, a centurion shouts orders to reinforce the camp walls with packed snow. You join the others, stomping down the white powder, shaping it like bricks. It's almost funny, Romans, masters of concrete and marble, now building walls out of snow. But it works. The barriers cut the wind, and the camp feels just a little less miserable. As the sun dips behind the peaks, the light turns golden. The snow glows faintly pink. You pause to catch your breath, and for a brief, fragile moment, everything looks almost peaceful. You can hear the crackle of fires, the murmurs of soldiers, the soft hiss of falling snow. The general walks through the camp, his cloak billowing like a banner. He stops to inspect a fire pit, nods approvingly and moves on. You realise that despite everything, the cold, the hunger, the exhaustion, the machine of Rome still moves. The discipline, the routine, the belief that order can conquer chaos. That night you crawl back into your tent. The air inside is warmer now, the hide walls thick with frost but solid. You lie down beside Marcus and 2 others, the shared body heat turning the tent into something almost cosy. Someone outside starts humming softly, a tune from the southern provinces. It's slow, melancholy, but beautiful. The snow taps gently against the roof, rhythmic, steady. You close your eyes and imagine the tent as a cocoon, the storm as a lullaby. The cold is still there, pressing close, but it's no longer an enemy, just part of the world, like the wind or the stars. You think about all the soldiers who've slept like this before you, all the ones who will after. The mountains, eternal and indifferent, have seen them all, and tomorrow they'll see you climb higher still. You smile faintly in the dark. "See you in the morning," you whisper, though you're not sure if it's to your tent mates or to the mountain itself. When morning breaks, you swear you can feel the cold before you even open your eyes. It's the kind that's already in your bones, as if the mountain itself decided to live under your skin. You flex your fingers, but they move slowly, stiff as twigs. The tent smells faintly of leather and smoke, and the air inside is so sharp it stings to breathe. You pull back your cloak, and that's when you see it. Your sandals are frozen solid. The leather is stiff, white with frost. You tap one against the ground, and ice flakes off like scales. "Well," you mutter, "so much for toes." Marcus groans beside you. "If they fall off, you're not borrowing mine." The famous Roman caligae, those open-toed sandals every legionary swore by, were perfect for dry heat and long marches across dirt roads. But here, higher in the Alps, they were your worst enemy. Historians still debate whether Roman soldiers modified them with cloth or fur during winter campaigns. Some say they wrap their feet in wool or animal hide. Others think they just suffered and hoped for spring. Judging by how your feet feel right now, you're betting on the suffering part. You start layering scraps of wool around your toes, then wrap the sandals as tightly as you can. It's not elegant, but it's something. Marcus watches, smirking. You look like a mummy escaped from a laundry basket. You grin back, jealous because mine will fall off slower. When the horn sounds, you step out into the light. The snow glitters under the early sun, almost mocking in its beauty. The whole camp glows faintly gold, smoke curling lazily from half-buried fires. The air smells of burning pine and boiled grain. Breakfast in the frozen empire. Marching starts slow today. Everyone is moving gingerly, trying not to slip. The ice underfoot is slick as glass, and one misstep could send a man sliding straight into oblivion. You tighten your pack, adjust your cloak, and start forward. Within minutes, you can't feel your toes again. Each step is like walking on knives. The wind cuts sideways, sharp enough to steal your breath. Still, the line of soldiers stretches forward, a trail of cloaks, spears, and determination threading through white silence. You pass a group of engineers reinforcing a narrow bridge, really just logs lashed together with rope. The wood creaks ominously underfoot. Don't look down, one mutters. Naturally you do. The drop is a dizzying blur of fog and darkness. Your stomach flips. You hurry across, pretending it's fine. It's not fine. Halfway across, you pause to catch your breath. That's when you notice the man ahead of you stamping his feet repeatedly, muttering under his breath. Keeps the blood flowing, he says when you ask. You join him, and for the next mile, the two of you stomp like dancers in the world's least enjoyable parade. The march continues for hours. You stop occasionally to rub your feet to check that your toes are still there, to curse creatively under your breath. Humour becomes armour now. Marcus invents a game where you guess how many fingers each man will still have by the time you reach Italy. The medicus overhears and shouts, "That's not funny!" Marcus shrugs. Neither is frostbite. Around midday you see a soldier sitting by the trail, holding his sandal in one hand, staring at his foot like it's betrayed him. The skin is pale, almost waxy. The medicus kneels beside him, rubbing his hands vigorously, muttering something about circulation. You look away. You don't want to know how bad it is. The terrain shifts again, and narrow ridges give way to wide open snowfields. The wind here is relentless, screaming through the valley like a living thing. You hunch your shoulders and push forward, step after miserable step. The only sound is the crunch of boots and the rattle of equipment. Somewhere ahead, someone starts singing a slow, deep tune. Half chant, half prayer, the rhythm spreads, each voice joining in like an echo. You don't know the words, but you hum along. It's haunting, but it helps. It makes the cold feel smaller, the climb less endless. Historians still debate whether Roman morale survived these mountain crossings through discipline or simple madness. Probably both. You can feel it in yourself now, this stubborn refusal to give up, this quiet defiance. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's denial. Either way, it works. By the time the sun dips low again, you're back at camp, peeling off frozen layers like armour. Your feet are numb, but when you hold them near the fire, pain shoots through them so sharply you yelp. Marcus laughs. That means they're still attached. You glare. You laugh now, I'm stealing your boots next. Dinner is thicker tonight, grain mixed with bits of salted meat and melted snow. It's warm, filling, and tastes faintly of smoke. You savour every bite. Around you the soldiers talk quietly about home, about the baths, about women, about anything that doesn't involve frostbite. When it's time to sleep, you tuck your sandals near the fire, hoping they'll thaw by morning. You lie down beside Marcus, who's already half asleep, muttering something about Sicily and sunshine. You smile, eyes heavy, body sore. As you drift off, you think about how fragile you are here. Tiny against these mountains, yet still moving, still breathing. The Romans didn't conquer nature. They just learned how to endure it, one frozen foot at a time. You close your eyes and let the crackle of the fire lull you. Outside, the wind howls through the peaks, but in your tent it's just a faint whisper. You dream of warmth, of home, of stepping into sunlight again. And somewhere in that dream you swear you hear laughter, your own, echoing off the ice. Maybe the cold hasn't won yet. Maybe it never will. You wake in the middle of the night to a deep rumbling sound that doesn't belong to wind or thunder. For a moment you think you're dreaming again, until the ground trembles. A heartbeat later the alarm horn blares. You're on your feet before your brain catches up. Someone shouts, "Avalanche!" And then the world erupts. Snow doesn't fall. It explodes. A wall of white roars down from the cliffs above, swallowing the stars, devouring the air. You grab your pack, your cloak, anything, and run toward the nearest ridge, but it's pointless. The sound itself hits like a wave, a physical force. You drop to your knees, dig your fingers into the ice, and press flat as a freight train of snow screams past. When it's over, you can't tell where up is. You're half buried, face numb, lungs burning. You spit snow, claw upward until you break through the surface. The camp is chaos, tents flattened, fires snuffed out, men shouting names, digging frantically with shields. You stagger toward Marcus's voice, coughing. He's already dragging a soldier out by the shoulders, both of them pale with frost and fear. No one talks much once the roll call starts. They're missing a few mercifully, but not zero. You feel the silence settle, heavy and thick. Someone mutters a prayer, someone else mutters a curse. The centurion simply says, "Move camp. This slope's cursed." You start again before dawn, moving cautiously. Every crunch underfoot feels like a warning. The snow shifts in strange ways now, whispering beneath the weight of the column. The wind carries faint echoes, or maybe it's just your heartbeat. The Romans, of course, had no word for avalanche in their manuals. They simply called it lapsus nivis, a fall of snow. Understatement of the century. Historians still debate how many lives were lost in alpine crossings due to these sudden bursts of nature's fury. Some records mention whole detachments vanishing overnight. Standing here, staring at a slope that just tried to kill you, you believe it. The path ahead is cruel. Narrow ridges cut through the white landscape like veins. One misstep and you're gone. You walk single file, eyes fixed on the boots ahead, shoulders hunched against the wind. The sky's low again, grey and heavy, pressing down like a lid. Every now and then, a chunk of snow slides from a ledge somewhere above, a soft hiss that makes every head turn. You find yourself scanning the cliffs obsessively, waiting for another roar that doesn't come. Fear becomes another layer of clothing, invisible but constant. Midday brings no rest. The general wants distance between the legion and the avalanche zone. You stop only long enough to gulp down melted snow and a few bites of hard bread that taste like regret. The mules plod forward, exhausted, their fur crusted with frost. You pat one on the neck, it barely flicks an ear. By afternoon the weather turns against you again. The wind howls, the snow returns, thin at first, then thick as wool. Visibility drops to almost nothing. The man in front of you fades into fog. You shout his name, but the wind swallows your voice. The line halts. Somewhere ahead, someone yells orders you can't hear. You press closer, clinging to the man's cloak before you like a lifeline. You remember something an old centurion once said back in Gaul. Nature doesn't hate us. It just doesn't notice we're here. Up here, that feels truer than ever. The mountain isn't your enemy. It isn't anything. It just is, and that indifference is worse than hostility. The march drags into twilight. The snow underfoot has turned to slush in some places, freezing your feet anew. The world is a blur of grey and motion. You stop thinking about direction, purpose, time. There's only forward. At some point you realise your lips have stopped feeling. You rub them, then your nose, just to make sure they're still attached. Marcus glances at you and says, "You look terrible." You grin weakly. "You should see yourself," he chuckles. "If we make it out, drinks are on me." "If we make it out," you echo, and you both laugh because it's either that or cry. Finally a shout comes from the front. A clearing, ahead, a place to stop. You stumble into it half crawling and collapse beside a rock. Fires go up instantly as small fragile flames trembling in the wind. Men cluster around them like moths. You hold out your hands, watching them tremble as the feeling painfully returns. Around the fire the silence returns, that eerie calm that always follows disaster. The snow falls gently now, like the mountain's apology. You sip warm wine, the kind that tastes like ashes but feels like mercy. Historians still argue whether these soldiers, your brothers, feared nature more than battle. After today, you know the answer. You'd face an army before you'd face another avalanche. At least armies you can stab. The stars peek through at last, faint and cold. You lean back, exhausted, and look up. They seem impossibly far away, flickering in a world untouched by wind or fear. The fire crackles softly. The man next to you hums a tune, the same one you've heard for days now, slow and sad, but oddly comforting. You close your eyes and listen. For now, there's no avalanche, no command, no march, just warmth, breath, and the slow rhythm of survival. The mountain will wait for you tomorrow. It always does. The next morning greets you with a brittle kind of silence. Not peace exactly, but the quiet that comes after the world's run out of energy to shout. The wind is calm, the sky is pale, and for the first time in days the snow sits still. You wake slowly, joints creaking, your breath ghosting into the cold air. Marcus is already awake, poking at the embers of last night's fire. "You still alive?" he mutters without looking up. "Mostly," you answer. "Some parts might have frozen off, but I'll check later." He snorts. "Add it to the list." The men move sluggishly, but there's a strange lightness today. After the avalanche, after the chaos, simple stillness feels like a gift. The centurion calls for roll, his voice hoarse. Fewer names this time. No one says the number out loud, but you all feel it in your bones. Breakfast is meagre as ever. Boiled grain, salted meat, melted snow. But it's hot, and that's enough to make it glorious. Someone even finds a handful of herbs in a pouch and tosses them in, pretending it's a feast. The camp smells faintly of thyme and smoke. When the horn sounds, you groan, stand, and start packing. Your fingers ache with every buckle and strap. The metal of your armour feels like touching death itself. Still you move, slow, rhythmic, automatic, march, pause, breathe, repeat. By midday you can feel the exhaustion set in. It's not the kind you sleep off, it's the kind that becomes part of you. You can't tell whether the pounding in your chest is your heart or the mountain's heartbeat echoing through the ground. Someone behind you starts humming again, a familiar marching rhythm, steady and slow. One by one others join in. You do too, your voice low and rough. It's not really singing, it's survival through sound. Historians still debate how Roman legions maintained morale during long campaigns. Some say it was strict discipline and fear of punishment. Others believe it was camaraderie, that shared misery forged a bond stronger than iron. You know now it's both. The army moves as one because that's the only way anyone survives. You march until the sun reaches its peak, the snow around you glowing like glass. Then comes a shout, a call for rest. The relief is immediate, almost painful. Men drop to their knees, shedding packs, pulling off helmets. The snow hisses faintly under the heat of their bodies. You collapse next to Marcus, both of you leaning against a half-buried boulder. "If we ever make it home," he says between breaths, "I'm never wearing shoes again." "Or clothes," you reply. "Just sun." He laughs, a dry, cracked sound. "You'd get arrested in Rome." Worth it. Around you laughter bubbles in small bursts. It's not joy, it's defiance. Every joke is a little victory against despair. Someone starts a game of guess the next disaster, and the answers range from angry mountain goats to falling icicles of death. The absurdity keeps everyone smiling. Later a medicus wanders by with a pouch of strange-smelling ointment. "For frostbite," he says. "Made from bear sire, fat and herbs." You sniff it and nearly gag. "Smells like regret," he grins. "Then it's working." The day stretches long. You rebuild a few tents, tend the fire, scrape ice off your armor. It's the little tasks that keep you sane. Every clink of metal, every spark from flint, every breath that fogs the air. They remind you you're still alive. By late afternoon, the general gathers the centurions. You can't hear what's said, but you see the concern on their faces. They're running low on supplies, food, wood, patience. The decision is made to descend soon, find lower ground before winter tightens its grip completely. A small murmur of hope ripples through the camp. That night you sit around a fire with the same familiar faces. The flames paint everyone gold, softening the hard edges of fatigue. Someone passes a skin of wine. You take a sip, warm and sour. It feels like courage. Marcus strums a lute, badly, humming a lazy tune about the warmth of home. The others join in, mumbling half-remembered lyrics. The rhythm is off, the voice is cracked, but somehow it sounds perfect. You tap your hand on your knee in time with the beat, watching the sparks rise into the night like tiny prayers. You think about everything the cold has taken, and everything it hasn't. Your humour, your humanity, the simple ability to laugh even when your teeth chatter. You realise that maybe this is Rome's true strength. Not its armies, not its walls, but its people's refusal to let misery be the final word. The fire pops, a log collapses inward. You feed it another branch, watching the flames catch. The warmth spreads through your hands, into your chest. You lean back, eyes half closed, listening to the wind sigh through the trees above. Somewhere far off an owl calls. Snowflakes drift lazily past the firelight, glowing orange before vanishing into the dark. You feel the mountain breathing again, slow, deep, eternal. Marcus nudges you with his elbow. You think the gods are watching? You shrug. If they are, I hope they're impressed, he chuckles, or at least laughing with us. You smile, eyes heavy. The laughter fades into the quiet crackle of the fire. The stars blink faintly above, distant and patient. You lie back on your pack, pull your cloak over your shoulders, and let the world blur. For tonight, the mountain is calm, the men are warm, and for the first time in a long time, you almost believe that spring will come. When dawn rises again, it brings with it something unusual, clarity. The sky is a flawless blue, the snow glittering so fiercely it almost looks alive. The cold remains, biting and dry, but for the first time in weeks, there's sunlight. Real, golden, blinding sunlight. You blink into it, your eyes watering. For a heartbeat, you almost forget the weight of armour, hunger, or frostbite. The men stir slowly, dazed by the subtle and sudden brightness. It feels wrong somehow, too beautiful, too peaceful. The mountains, bathed in morning light, look like temples of marble and fire. Even the most sceptical soldier mutters a quiet prayer. You see one man trace the sign of Jupiter in the air. Another whispers something to his household gods, carved in tiny wooden figures he carries in his pouch. Faith takes strange shapes up here. Rome's gods, so grand in their marble halls, feel far away. Up here, the soldiers have started inventing new ones. Spirits of ice and wind, guardians of passes and bridges. You've heard them speak of the White Mother, a mountain goddess, they swear, keeps the avalanches at bay. Historians still debate how Roman religion adapted in distant lands, whether the legions blended local traditions or simply improvised when Rome's gods felt too far to hear. You like to think the mountains appreciate the offerings, the bits of bread, the whispered oaths, the wine poured quietly into the snow. Maybe superstition's just another form of hope, something to cling to when the world forgets you exist. By mid-morning, the general orders a short march to higher ground to scout for a better descent route. You shoulder your pack and start moving again, your boots crunching on the crusted snow. The air feels thin, like glass. Every breath cuts but fills you with a strange alertness. The sunlight warms your face, and for once it feels like the world's not trying to kill you. The path winds upward through a narrow ravine. The rock walls on either side are streaked with frozen water, glittering like mirrors. You stop for a moment, watching sunlight scatter through the ice. It's mesmerizing, so much beauty in a place built to break men. Marcus notices you staring. Thinking poetic thoughts again? Thinking about how much I miss roofs, you reply. He laughs. The poet returns to his favourite subject, indoors. It's strange, you think, how faith bends but doesn't break. The gods of Rome have followed their soldiers to the ends of the earth, into deserts, forests, and now mountains. And every time they change shape just enough to survive. Maybe that's what keeps Rome alive too. Adaptation, persistence, a willingness to believe in something, anything, just long enough to take another step forward. The march continues. The air grows warmer the higher you climb, not because it's actually warmer, but because your blood's pumping again. The rhythm of footsteps and clinking metal becomes almost musical. You start humming quietly, syncing your breath with the pace. The snow crunches in time, steady and sure. At the next rest point, the men gather around a fire that someone managed to coax from damp twigs. The smoke rises thin and white, curling toward the sun. You sit, stretch your legs, and pull out a piece of hard bread. You break it in half, hand the other piece to Marcus. "A feast," you declare. He grins. The gods are generous. Someone starts telling stories again, legends of Rome's heroes, of Julius Caesar crossing rivers, of Aeneas carrying his father from Troy. The soldiers listen in silence. When the tale ends, you add one of your own, half invention, half truth, about how someday bards will sing of nameless men who crossed the Alps, not for conquest, but because they refused to turn back. That earns a few nods, a few chuckles. Make sure they mention the cold, someone says, and my missing toes. You promise you'll include both. As the sun dips lower, a strange peace settles over the camp. The mountain glows orange, the snow turning pink and soft. You find yourself watching the sky more than the ground, hypnotized by colour. For once, it doesn't feel like the Alps are trying to crush you. They're just there, immense, timeless, watching. When night comes, the firelight flickers against the cliffs, casting shadows that dance like ghosts. You can hear someone softly praying again, not to Jupiter or Mars, but to the nameless gods of the mountain. You close your eyes and join silently, not out of fear, but respect. Because up here, faith isn't about victory or glory, it's about surviving another night. As you drift towards sleep, the snow outside the tent glows faintly in the moonlight. And for the first time in a long while, you feel safe. Not because of walls or weapons, but because somehow you've learnt to live with the cold instead of fighting it. And that, you realise, is the real secret of survival in the Alps. You stop trying to conquer the mountain. You let it teach you how to stay alive. The storm returns before dawn, quiet at first, then relentless. You wake to the hiss of snow sliding off the tent, the muffled sound of men moving outside. The air inside the hide walls feels heavy, thick with the smell of damp wool and smoke. When you crawl out, the world has vanished again into white. The trail, the sky, the peaks, everything is swallowed in blinding fog. You blink into the emptiness, disoriented. The silence isn't silence at all. It hums, low and endless, like the breath of the mountain. Somewhere ahead, a horn sounds once, twice, then fades into the storm. You can't see who blew it. Visibility's gone, Marcus mutters beside you, pulling his cloak tighter. His beard is stiff with frost, his lashes rimmed in white. "We should wait," the centurion shakes his head. "We move. If we stop, we freeze." And that's that. The line forms, a thin, uneven snake disappearing into the fog. You shoulder your pack and follow the man in front of you, eyes locked on the faint outline of his cloak. Every few steps, the wind shifts, and he vanishes completely. You panic for a heartbeat, then see him again, a ghost reappearing from nowhere. The rhythm repeats over and over, feels like walking through eternity, move, vanish, reappear, breathe. Snow crunches underfoot, muffled by layers of powder. Your sandals slide occasionally on hidden ice, each slip sending a jolt of fear through your gut. You hear curses, prayers, laughter. It all blurs together into one long, trudging chant. At one point, the man behind you stumbles. You grab his arm before he goes down. Careful, lost my footing, he gasps. Don't lose me too, you say, trying to sound lighter than you feel. Historians still debate how Roman legions navigated in conditions like these. Some think they used ropes to link soldiers together on narrow trails, others that they relied solely on discipline and the unbroken chain of vision. Right now, you can believe either theory, and neither feels foolproof. The snow deepens, each step becomes an act of will. You can no longer feel your toes or your fingers, you move out of memory more than muscle, one leg forward, then the other. The wind screams between the peaks, dragging bits of snow into your face. You close your eyes and march half blind. Hours blur together. Time dissolves. You lose track of how far you've come or how far remains. The only markers are the sounds around you. Shields clanking, men coughing, boots crunching. Then suddenly, a shout. Someone's gone off the path. You freeze. There's a scuffle, a cry, and then nothing. Everyone stands still. The centurion calls the man's name into the fog. No answer, just the wind. The silence afterward is worse than the loss. You stare into the white, half expecting to see him reappear. He doesn't. You move again, slower now, more careful. The line closes tighter, shoulders nearly touching. Marcus starts humming under his breath, a tuneless drone just to fill the space. You join in quietly. It's eerie, but it helps. Eventually the slope begins to rise again. The snow gets denser, heavier. Each breath feels colder than the last, slicing your throat. You can't tell if it's midday or midnight. Everything is the same dull grey. The centurion halts suddenly. You bump into the man ahead. The front of the line's vanished again, swallowed by the fog. Shouts echo back, orders, maybe panic. You strain to hear. Then faintly a voice calls, "Bridge ahead." A bridge. You step forward carefully until the outline appears, a narrow span of planks and rope stretching across a gorge. The snow hides the depth, but the sound of wind whistling below tells you it's far, too far. The first soldier crosses slowly, gripping the ropes tight. The bridge groans but holds, then the next, then you. The planks sway under your feet, each step creaking like an old man's bones. The fog below looks bottomless. You don't look down. You focus on the sound of the ropes humming, on Marcus's boots moving just ahead. Halfway across, the wind shifts, nearly knocking you sideways. You press flat, heart hammering. The bridge steadies. You move again, step by trembling step, till finally solid ground greets your feet. You exhale a shaky laugh you didn't know you were holding. By the time the last man crosses, the snow's falling heavier. The general gives the order to camp in a sheltered ravine nearby. Fires go up fast, smoke curling lazily into the fog. You crouch beside one, holding out your hands until you feel the prickling pain of blood returning. No one talks much tonight. The mountain silence has seeped into everyone. You eat quietly, listening to the snow whisper against the tents. You think of the man who vanished earlier, and imagine he's still walking somewhere, just ahead, lost in the same fog. You look up. The clouds shift for a moment, revealing a single star. It flickers, faint but steady. Marcus notices too. You think that's Rome? You smile. Maybe it's the way home. You sit there a while, staring at that stubborn little light until the fog swallows it again. The fires crackle, the wind hums low, and somewhere deep in the white silence the mountain sighs, patient, ancient, indifferent, as if reminding you that survival here is never promised, only borrowed. The world feels different the next morning. The fog has thinned, and for the first time in days you can actually see where you're going. Peaks rise around you like stone teeth capped with white and streaked with sunlight. The cold's still vicious, but at least it comes with a view. You pull your cloak tighter as the order to move comes down the line. The ground creaks beneath the boots of hundreds of men, a rhythm so steady it's almost hypnotic. The mountain pass opens wider here, the snow packed flat by those who walked before you. Ahead you spot a group of men working near a frozen cliff face. Roman engineers. These are the real miracle workers of the army. They don't get songs or statues, but without them, half the empire would still be stuck in the mud somewhere. You trudge closer, curious, watching as they carve steps directly into the ice using iron picks. Sparks fly with each strike, small and bright in the grey morning. "Morning entertainment," Marcus mutters beside you. "Let's hope they know what they're doing." One of the engineers overhears and smirks. "We always do, mostly." The Romans never stopped building, not even in the middle of nowhere. Bridges, ramps, drainage, trenches, causeways. They left their fingerprints in every corner of the known world. Historians still debate how they managed such feats in hostile environments without modern tools. You're watching the answer happen in real time: brute strength, ingenuity, and pure spite. The engineers have lashed together a makeshift bridge from frozen logs and thick ropes, forming a path across a deep crevasse. The wood creaks but holds. You can smell the resin from freshly cut pine, sharp and clean. They coat the ropes in grease to keep them from snapping in the cold, an idea that makes you both impressed and slightly terrified. As you watch, a soldier tries crossing. He moves carefully, his breath steaming. Halfway across, a rope groans. Everyone freezes. The engineer in charge, an older man with frost in his beard, shouts, "Keep moving!" The soldier obeys, and with a final lurch, makes it across. The crowd exhales. You clap despite yourself. The work continues all morning. You help haul ropes and pass tools, your hands aching, but grateful for the distraction. The steady rhythm of hammer and pick becomes almost comforting. Each thud echoes through the valley, a heartbeat of survival. By midday, the bridge is complete. The general rides up, inspecting the work. He nods once, curtly, and orders the column to advance. You follow Marcus across the frozen span. The ice groans but stays intact. Below you, the gorge stretches down into mist. So far you can't see the bottom. The air hums faintly like the mountain's own voice. On the other side, a new problem awaits. A wall of rock and ice blocking the path. The engineers get to work again, this time using fire. They pile dry wood at the base and light it, the flames licking against the frozen stone. The ice hisses, cracks, and slowly gives way. Steam rises in thick white plumes. The smell of wet rock fills the air. Someone near you whistles. "We're cooking the Alps," you grin. "Maybe we'll thaw them completely." Historians still argue whether the Romans truly used fire to break through frozen passes. Some call it myth. Others believe it was a real engineering technique, primitive but effective. Watching the wall crumble before you is hard to call it anything but genius. The march resumes, slow but steady. The path widens, and for a while you almost forget how dangerous it all is. The rhythm of movement, the smell of smoke and pine, the sound of distant hammering. It's all strangely soothing. Even the wind seems gentler now, less of an enemy and more of a companion whispering encouragement. When the day finally wanes, the legion stops near a ledge overlooking a vast valley. The view steals your breath. Below, you can see endless ridges fading into blue, the snow glowing faintly under the setting sun. The men stand in silence, awestruck. Even the general looks moved. You think of how far you've come, from the fertile plains of Gaul to this frozen cathedral of stone. Every step carved into history by men who refuse to stop walking. You imagine future travellers finding the traces you've left behind, tools buried in ice, footprints fossilised in snow, and wonder if they'll understand what it took to cross these peaks. As night falls, fires spring up again, small islands of warmth in the vast white dark. You sit close to one, rubbing your hands, feeling the sting as heat returns. Someone passes around a pot of thin soup, boiled barley, bits of salt pork, a miracle in liquid form. You drink deeply, letting it thaw the ache inside your chest. Marcus leans back against a rock, sighing. "You ever think we'll get back home?" You nod. "If Rome can build roads through mountains, we can find our way back on one." He chuckles. "That's a very Roman answer. Best kind there is. The stars come out, sharp and bright against the black ski. You lie on your back, staring up, feeling the ground's cold seep through your cloak. The fire pops softly beside you. The air smells of pine smoke and victory. Not the kind from battle, but the quiet kind, the one that comes from simply surviving another day. You close your eyes, and for once you don't dream of warmth or home. You dream of the bridge you helped build, the ice that cracked, the fire that hissed, the sound of the mountain breaking open to let you pass. You dream of the way the world changes, not because men conquer it, but because they refuse to stop trying. When morning arrives, it's quiet. Eerily, beautifully quiet. The wind has gone still, and the only sound left is the faint creak of the snow settling under its own weight. You sit up, stretch, and look out over the valley below. The peaks glow pink and gold under the rising sun, and for the first time you can actually see the southern slopes. It hits you. You're nearly through. Marcus yawns beside you. If that's Italy, I'm going to kiss the ground. Just wait till we find out it's another mountain, you mutter. He groans. Don't ruin the moment. The air is thinner here, sharper, but the wind's lost its bite. You can smell pine again, faint but real, and somewhere below the faint trickle of running water. It's the sound of life returning. The general's horn sounds. The men gather quickly, the mood lighter than you've seen in weeks. There's laughter, even a few jokes. Someone starts humming a tavern tune from Rome, and before long the whole line's humming along. It's not quite music, more like collective relief. Today's march begins downhill, and that simple shift feels miraculous. You can feel gravity doing half the work, the snow's thinner, the ground visible in patches of brown and grey. You can smell earth, again, not just ice. It's almost intoxicating, but the descent isn't easy. The path is slick, the rocks unstable. You keep your eyes down, focusing on each step. Every few yards a man slips, swears, catches himself. The line keeps moving, careful but determined. The general rides ahead, scanning the horizon. When he stops, you stop. When he waves, you move. Discipline keeps everyone alive. Somewhere in the line, a soldier starts telling a story loud enough for everyone to hear. It's about Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who led his army and elephants across these same mountains centuries before. They say he lost half his men, the storyteller says, but the half that lived scared Rome so badly they still talk about it. Marcus scoffs. Elephants? Up here? No way. True story, you say. Historians still argue which route he took, but it was through the Alps, just like us. He shakes his head. Then he was either mad or immortal. Probably both, you answer. As the march continues, you start to notice familiar shapes along the trail. Rock cairns, ancient markings carved into stone, half buried by snow. The guide explains they were placed by earlier travellers, maybe even Hannibal's men. You run your hand along one, tracing grooves cut by hands long gone. The stone is cold, but it feels alive somehow, like a memory frozen in time. You start to imagine those earlier armies, Carthaginians, traders, lost shepherds, each carving their own story into these mountains. Now you're adding yours step by frozen step. The afternoon sun warms your face as you reach a ridge overlooking a narrow gorge. Below, a river snakes through the ice, glinting like glass. You can see smoke far off in the distance, villages, maybe Roman outposts, civilization. The general halts the column. For a long moment no one moves. Then he raises his arm and shouts something you can't hear, but you don't need to. The cheer erupts instantly. Hoarse, ragged, joyous. Men shout, laugh, cry. You grin until your face hurts. Marcus claps you on the back so hard you nearly fall. We're through. That night the camp feels different. The fires burn brighter. The laughter's louder. Even the food, still the same barley and pork, tastes like victory. The engineers play dice with pebbles, and someone's even fashioned a flute from a hollow reed. The tune is clumsy but sweet, floating above the crackle of flames. You sit beside Marcus, staring into the fire. Think anyone will remember this? You ask. He shrugs. They'll remember the general, maybe the officers, not us. Then we'll have to tell it ourselves, you say. He smirks. You? Tell a story? You'd never shut up. Exactly. Historians still debate which Roman expedition this was, who led it, which pass they used, and what it cost. They piece together fragments, names, numbers, maps, but they'll never know what it felt like. The sound of your breath freezing mid-air, the taste of smoke in your throat, the silence of snow burying the world. That's the part only you can remember. The wind picks up again, but now it feels softer, like a sigh instead of a scream. You close your eyes and listen. Somewhere behind you the mountains loom, vast, ancient, silent witnesses to your stubbornness. You think of the bones buried in that snow, the ones from your army and the ones from Hannibal's. Maybe someday others will walk this path too, feeling the same mix of fear and awe. Maybe they'll whisper about the mad Romans who crossed where no one should. You smile faintly, leaning back, letting the fire's warmth sink into your skin. For now, you're not a soldier, not a conqueror. You're just another heartbeat in the long rhythm of history. The mountains will forget your name, but not your footsteps. By the time dawn spills across the snow, the air already feels different. Warmer, gentler, as if the mountains are finally releasing their grip. You open your eyes to sunlight so bright it hurts, but you don't look away. For weeks, it's been nothing but grey skies and frozen breath. And now, here it is. Colour. The world suddenly has colour again. The camp stirs to life with a strange hum of disbelief. Men stretch, laugh, cough, smoke from their lungs, and blink into the light like animals emerging from hibernation. The general stands on a ridge, cloaked, whipping in the breeze, staring at the horizon as if he can't quite believe it either. Below, the southern slopes stretch out, green in patches, wet and alive. You can see rivers gleaming, trees shaking loose their snow, the faint dark lines of roads. Civilization. Marcus grins beside you. That's not a dream, right? You shake your head. If it is, don't wake me. The order to break camp comes quickly. There's no hesitation this time, no sluggish start, no grumbling. Every man moves like he's suddenly remembered what hope feels like. The sound of boots striking thawing ground replaces the crunch of ice, and the smell of wet soil fills the air. You didn't realize how much you missed the scent of dirt until now. The descent begins cautiously, each step a test. The ice is melting in places, turning the trail slick. Streams of meltwater trickle past, cutting silver lines through the snow. The mules walk easier now, heads high, snorting steam into the sunlight. The air feels heavier, thick with moisture, but you welcome it. Every breath feels like coming back to life. The higher peaks still loom behind you, great white monuments against the blue, but ahead lies a patchwork of green and brown, the promise of warmth. By midday you pass a cluster of pine trees, their needles trembling in the soft breeze. A few soldiers stop to touch the trunks, almost reverently. Feels like home, one whispers. You nod. The bark is rough, alive, real. Not the frozen glass world of the upper passes, but something you can believe in again. The general allows a rest at a wide plateau where the snow thins to patches. Fires spring up and the smoke rises freely instead of hugging the ground. The men shed their cloaks for the first time in weeks, faces pink with sunlight. Someone jokes that he's forgotten what skin feels like under armour. Another says, "Don't worry, you'll still smell like boiled goat." Everyone laughs, the sound raw and bright. Historians still debate what the Romans felt when they finally emerged from the Alps after these crossings, whether it was triumph, exhaustion, or disbelief. You think it was all three blended into one overwhelming sense of relief. You feel it now, sitting on the grass that's more mud than earth, letting the sun thaw your hands. You never thought dirt could feel so luxurious. After lunch, the march resumes. The path widens and the descent steepens. You have to brace yourself with your spear, sliding occasionally, laughing when Marcus slips and swears in inventive Latin. "The gods are testing my dignity," he mutters. You grin. "Pretty sure they gave up on that weeks ago." Below you can see the valleys stretching toward the plains, wide and golden, dotted with trees. The air changes again, heavier with the scent of pine resin and damp soil. The snow becomes slush, then puddles, then disappears entirely. When you finally step onto bare ground, the sound it makes, soft, muddy, alive, is the most beautiful thing you've ever heard. Men cheer spontaneously, stomping their boots into the earth, hugging, shouting. You can feel the joy vibrating through the ranks. Some kneel and press their hands into the dirt like pilgrims at a shrine. One soldier laughs so hard he cries, then says between breaths, "I'm never complaining about heat again." The general calls for a brief halt. He dismounts, kneels, and draws his hand through the soil. "The South," he says softly, voice carrying on the wind. "We made it." You sit nearby, staring up at the ridge you've just descended. From here, the mountains look impossibly high, impossibly far. You can hardly believe you crossed them. For a moment, you almost miss the silence of the snow, the strange peace of that white world. Almost. As the sun dips lower, the camp forms one last time at the edge of the forest. Fires burn hot and bright, and the air hums with laughter. Someone roasts meat over the flames, real meat, from a goat they traded with a mountain villager. The smell drifts through the camp like a dream. You and Marcus sit side by side, sharing a chunk of bread and a skin of wine. The taste of both feels richer than any feast you've had in Rome. He raises his cup. "To the mountains," he says. You raise yours. "To surviving them." The flames flicker against your faces, warm and alive. The stars come out, but they seem softer now, less cold. The world feels wide again, not hostile, just enormous. You lie back, hands behind your head, staring at the dark outline of the Alps. They look smaller now, almost gentle in the moonlight, but you know better, they're not gentle. They're eternal. You smile to yourself, whispering Valle Montes farewell mountains. And though the wind doesn't answer, you swear. For just a moment, it sounds like it's saying farewell back. That night, the camp glows like a constellation scattered across the valley floor. Fires flicker, voices hum low, and laughter rises like mist from the warmth. For the first time in forever, you're not huddling to survive. You're sitting upright, cloak loose, your back against a pine trunk that smells of sap and smoke. You can feel the life coming back into your body, every ache, every spark of blood, every reminder that you're still here. The general walks among the tents, no longer shouting, just nodding quietly to each man. There's pride in his eyes, but also something else, relief, maybe even disbelief. Rome demanded impossible things of its soldiers, but this, you think, was beyond even her appetite for glory. You stretch your legs toward the fire, watching the last of the snowmelt trickle down from the slopes above. Water drips rhythmically from the branches, the mountain's heartbeat, now slower, calmer. The sound blends with the crackle of burning pine. Marcus tosses a pine cone into the flames and leans back. "You realize," he says, "when we get home, nobody's going to believe any of this." You smirk. "They never do. That's why history exists, to make liars sound poetic." He laughs, shaking his head. "Then make me sound heroic." "I'll try," you reply, "but it'll take some creative editing." He grins, then grows quiet, eyes reflecting firelight. "I thought I was going to die up there. When the avalanche hit, I swear I heard my mother's voice." You nod slowly. Everyone heard something. The mountains talk, just not in words. He glances at you. "What do they say to you?" You poke at the fire with a stick. "They said keep walking." The conversation fades into the hum of camp sounds. Metal scraping, water boiling, someone humming that same old marching tune. You realize how different it sounds now, slower, warmer, almost content. Historians will later write about this crossing, about logistics and weather and casualties. They'll draw neat lines on maps, count supplies and argue about routes, but none of them will write about the silence of snow falling on helmets, or the sting of wind through open sandals, or the way firelight looks when you've gone days without seeing colour. They won't understand that this wasn't about empire anymore. It was about endurance. The fire burns lower. The men settle one by one into sleep, their laughter fading into snores. You stay awake a little longer, staring into the embers. You think about Rome, not the marble one, not the Senate or the generals, but the Rome inside you. The one made of stubbornness, of grit, of the quiet refusal to surrender. That's the Rome that crossed the Alps. You close your eyes, and for a moment the memories flicker like film. The icy wind at your back, the avalanches that roared like angry gods, the endless white where you learn the shape of your own breath, and finally the sunlight, the miracle of colour after a world of grey. You breathe deeply, letting the warmth fill you. The cold still lingers somewhere deep, but it's part of you now. Proof that you faced the impossible and walked through it. The stars above are the same ones that watched Hannibal's elephants and Caesar's armies. They'll keep watching long after you're gone. You smile at the thought. Maybe the mountains will remember you after all, not by name, but by the echo of footsteps and the whisper of laughter frozen in the snow. You lie back, the earth soft beneath you, the fire dying beside you. Marcus mumbles something in his sleep, probably a curse about the cold. You grin. The night feels gentle. Somewhere far behind you, the peaks gleam faintly under the moon. The same mountains that almost killed you now glowing like old friends. You whisper a final thank you, not for mercy, but for the lesson. That survival isn't about strength or glory, but about the quiet courage to keep going one frozen step at a time. The fire fades to embers. The stars blur. The wind sighs once through the pines, then stills. You close your eyes and the world softens into darkness. The mountain fades from your memory in fragments. A flash of white, a sound like thunder, the rough warmth of wool against frozen skin. Weeks later, when you finally march under the soft Italian sun, the cold feels like a story that happened to someone else. But sometimes, when the wind changes, you catch a whiff of pine smoke. And for a heartbeat, you're back there, in that narrow pass, knee-deep in snow, breath fogging the air. You tell yourself it was just a road, another march, another piece of Rome expanding its shadow. Yet something in you knows better. The Alps weren't conquered, they were endured. They allowed you passage and you took it. That's the kind of victory you don't parade, the kind you carry quietly deep in your bones. When you return to the city, you'll walk past the marble arches, the cheering crowds, the poets with their ink-stained fingers. You'll let them believe whatever they need to. Let them sing of triumph. You'll keep the truth, that for all Rome's glory, it was the human heart that crossed the mountains first. And on some distant night, years from now, when the fire burns low and your children ask what it was like, you'll smile softly and say, cold, beautiful, endless. Then you'll close your eyes and hear the mountains again, their deep, slow breathing, their silence older than empires. And as sleep takes you, you'll whisper once more, not to Rome, but to the world that almost buried you. I kept walking,